So we have seen three phases in the cosmological landscape. So from the earlier days, they worship the nature, and then there are a lot of interaction between the man and nature happened, and man overruled, and a lot of open spaces were created, jungles were cleared, and the farmings were done, and the farmings were cleared, and small settlements were done. So this is how it has been completely escaped. The land was escaped from the earlier days. So next comes the next cosmological landscape, that is prehistoric landscape, is the song lines in Australia. So this is no, they are not seen as lines, but they have lot of things which shows uh, how the settlements have moved from one place to another. So there are a lot of symbols that have been drawn on the land, and which will be done in a bigger scale, unimaginable bigger scale, and they are depicting some symbolism which is pointing, or actually it was orienting towards particular direction, and they are representing the connectivity or axial lines between the different places in the particular landscapes. So same way we have seen the different lines in several places, like in Australia, song lines, and Nazca lines, Peru lines, and then day lines in England. So there are different lines and the symbols that was found in the land, which are called as geoglyphs. So that has been done on the land, so they are called as geoglyphs. So that may be dry land or a lake land which has been dry, and they have done this uh, etching on the land, wherein it created as a pattern. And once they do the etching, the bottom moisture land will be making the impression on the land, and that has been left without any degradation for several years, several thousands years of history it is holding, these lines are holding. So these are called as song lines in Australia. So you can see in the map so how the song lines are running. So they have some aboriginal tribe settlements, the tribes belonging to that particular region, and how these nomadic tribal settlements have settled down in the whole lands of Australia. And they have some evolution pattern or a connectivity through the lot of symbols and layouts in the lands, wherein they walked over. So that will be like a connectivity path. So this will be one settlement, another settlement, and this will be connected with the path lines. So they call this as song lines in Australia, which holds a very, very earlier tradition and culture. They have a lot of symbolic representation for each and every element. Lot of animals and other figures were symbolically represented in the connecting path. So you can see this is the song lines of Australia. How lengthy it is. It has been running through several kilometers. So these are all the various axes that is connecting the song lines all over the Australia. A lot of cultural values are associated with it, and you can see the various geoglyphs that is seen over the land. This is Nazca lines that is seen in Peru. So you can see it is a land, dry land, and you have the moisture beneath. When I bring in that picture, you can see the color variation, and this has been retained there for several years, and the size is unimaginable. So how much time they would have spent in creating these kind of geoglyphs, why they have been created, and they don't have any satellite or the aerial maps earlier days, and how they're able to do this. And generally, if you see from the nearest mountains or mounts, you can see the signature very clearly. That may be representing their existence, or as a clue for somebody to come from some other place, or lot of stories to connect to the aliens and so many things. They have done these geoglyphs on the land, and still it is existing. So this is the Nazca lines in Peru. So you can see they have a history of how they have created, how they would have formed this. So all these things in the modern century, we call it as the land art forms. So we can create land art forms, and which can symbolize a lot of things to the environment also. These are the geoglyphs, very large geoglyphs that is made in the Peru, and to create the straight lines, maybe they have made the two stakes, and then they have connected it to the cable, and they have laid all the stones on the way, and they created they digged that particular portion. They have created the lines, how they have created this lines perfectly. So all those things are um, uh, having a lot of questions hidden behind it. So generally they will be visible from the nearest mountain peaks. They can see, once they approach this mountain peaks, they can see, looking at this particular geoglyph, they can understand something which will have the geoglyphs will represent the symbolic thing of the plant, animals that existed in that particular place. The human figures also. You can see these are all the geoglyphs that have been created. This is one of the geoglyphs that has been created. How this perfection has been made, like how they made the straight lines, all those things are under research still now. So you can see some of which are 30 miles, 48-kilometer long, 300 geometrical design. How it's possible? There's a reason why they say that can be some of the advanced settlements in earlier days they had, or some of the advanced technologies they would have developed earlier. Then the ley lines England, this is a sacred site. So anything have imaginary, they don't see the line here, but everything has been connected in an axis. So if you connect all the sacred site in the particular place and you connect to the sun's orientation, everything is connected in an axis. So that is what the ley lines in England is about. So it's a cartographic system of earlier days of how they have perfectly aligned all these sacred sites together on a single axial line pointed towards the sun. So there are a lot of ley lines like this created all over the European nations. You can see a lot of lines, axial lines, which have been connected and pointing to one particular directions. So you can see how it has been connected. So these are all the points that have been connected. So this is the valleys and geoglyphs. All the site has been connected in this ley lines. This simple thing I want to show even from India, we have like the ley lines. We have connected ley lines connecting all these temples. So like that, if we explore, we may have so many things to find out like this. So everything is aligned in a perfect line. How it is possible? Who made this? So there was some concept of connecting actually all the sacred sites, or the power points of the whole system, or connecting the cosmological thing, understanding, and they have made something which all shows the ancient wisdom we had. So next comes to the ancient garden. So we are coming out from the prehistoric cosmological landscapes. Now everything is built. So we can say it as a human intervened landscape. So here they have been made, but they don't intervene the maximum landscape. They just being a part of it, which symbolize the way they live, the settlement pattern, or to symbolize why they have been connected, or to understand the nature, or to serve as a calendar, or just to show the settlement pattern, or the territory, or something like that, or a burial ground, or something. Later on, slowly, now we are coming to the ancient garden, where we have intentionally scaped something, have created gardens, we have created parks, which has been intentionally created by us. We made the planting garden, we planting palette, and we have created the whole thing arranged in that. So in that way, the earlier known the gardens, doom gardens, was the Nebuman tapes in Egypt. So we can see these are all seen as an evidence on the caves as well as in the carpet. They have this planting, or this layout has been designed, and it has been shown that that will be a pond, and surrounding there will be a lot of plants that have been kept there, just like a small garden near to the tombs. and then the later on the hunting gardens. So earlier the burial grounds and tombs as a memorial landscape, sacred precincts for the symbolic landscape. Later on, they had the human activity involved there, like hunting parks came into, like wherein they go for the hunting of the animals inside the garden. The practice of adventurous ride inside the particular park or something. So Mesopotamian hunting parks were the earliest adventurous park that is seen. And then well geometrically arranged gardens were seen in 546 in Persia. So wherein like a beautiful charbagh design, like cut through, and four layouts were made in perfectly in a geometrical pattern has been created in Persia in 546. So this all shows like how it has been evolved from the earlier lines where we cannot understand anything, how, why they have created, how they have created. Now slowly it is coming to a connection with how the nature has been taken as a controlled environment by the human beings. Man started controlling the landscape, and he want how it has to be arranged. So he started deliberately arranging everything inside the particular space. So this is the tomb of Nebuchadnezzar. You can see the earlier planting palette they have done in that scriptures. This has been there in that carpet, which shows like the trees, different kind of the orchards that is surrounding that particular pond area, and they have the smaller the trees and the smaller shrubs surrounding that particular water body, and the water body has a lot of species in it. All the species have been depicted here, the fishes, tortoise, and the ducks that were depicted here. And also these picture shows like how they were taking care of the garden, how they are digging, maintaining the garden, pruning, and how they are taking the fruits from that particular thing, how they are taking it for the wine preparation. So everything it is showing like the livelihood, the connection of the community and the gardens they have created. So this is ancient evidence of like how the earlier tomb gardens, which has been converted as a gardens for the community connection, and how they have started living together and scape the land for their comfort. And you can see this is one of the planting palette that has been seen in Senufar tomb area, where you can see like a beautiful depiction of this is avenue trees they have created, a small the fern varieties that have been seen there, and the ground cover and the trees like wild canopy trees. And you can see like how they have done this design in earlier days, and how they have created that landscape gardens. So the Hellenistic garden, we call it as Hellenistic garden, the Egyptian period, very popular in the royal courts of the kings and other. So the ancient garden with a beautiful planting palette you can see. Then it comes the hunting parks in Mesopotamia. So in Mesopotamia, a lot of developments happened. You can see like the pond surrounding area, everything has been deliberately created to create the curiosity, and which will help in the hunting thing. Like the people who move around this particular parks, and they will be having their hunting. So earlier days, you would also hear a lot of stories from the kings of the ancient India, like they go for the vanams for the hunting inside the vanams. So the vanams have been created purposefully for the hunting practices. Same way in the Mesopotamia, the hunting parks. This is the earlier hunting park that was seen. So these are the various scripture that is seen in the rock cuts and other thing. They have inscribed everywhere, which shows the evidence of the earlier hunting parks in those days. And 546 in Persia, Pasargade, this Charbagh gardens were found. A beautiful layout, geometrical layout has been created. The channeling and the ducts, the tunnels have been created to bring in the water to the particular garden. The irrigation is also given importance, and how the garden has been actually oriented, and the pavilions to connect to the people and the gardens they have created. So very earlier days itself, we have a beautiful geometrical gardens. A very deliberately scaped gardens have been found in Persia in 546 AD. So this is the leftovers of the gardens of the Persia, Pasargad. You can see like how beautifully they have these pavements and pavilions left over, and the gardens surrounding this whole area. So they have also written the garden contains fruits, trees, flowers, and lily and the rose. So many things like that. Even the earlier thing, like no, they have shown after this period, after this ancient period in the Middle Ages, the people have exported plants also from other countries, to Athens, Greece, and all, and they have brought in the exotic varieties of plant palette in their design. So this is next, like how from the gardens, villas, and all others have been developed as like deliberately scaped landscape. So this was the earlier residential landscape that was seen in early days of 50th century, house of Betty Pompeii. So wealthy Roman emperors were having this particular house of Pompeii, which will have a peristyle garden, a lot of pillars, and they will have a central courtyard with a fountain, and this will have the central axial to the water body, and there will be rooms arranged in between. So this is a beautiful example for the residential garden. And Pliny's seaside villa is like they have a coastal area, and a fort has been, the villa has been located on the hills, which will have a beautiful look over the particular coastal area, and it have a stepped terraces, and terraces have been, these are the terraces, and the terraces have been beautifully uprising the visual value, and they are getting the beautiful coastal thing, like no, the view from this particular, the view sheds have been perfectly oriented towards this the coastal landscape they had. So Pliny's seaside villa, a beautiful example of a coastal villa landscape, and Hadrian's Villa Tivoli, that is in the hills. So you have a huge terraced landscape and a big fortress, which shows the emperor's fascination towards the nature, and also the control of the whole city is seen over this Hadrian's Villa Tivoli. So these are the examples wherein like we found the evidences of the ancient gardens. And when it comes to the landscape architecture, as I said earlier, like we are seeing the evidence of the built, purposefully built, deliberately built landscape. So this is a scene from the Iraq, wherein like the picture has been wrongly kept. I'll be showing it. So this is the next part wherein the landscape architecture features that have been seen in the construction of temple grounds, palaces, and other thing, which shows the power of the deliberately scaped landscape. So we have seen the history, and I think you have a lot to keep in your mind now. So cosmological landscape and ancient landscape. So both the things you have some 10 to 12 places you have to keep in your mind. Um, so get the names to your mind, and have a small sketch of like you can small drafting of the sketches of this particular places. So for the exam you'll have very little time to write all those things. It may be like no, write a hint about the prehistoric landscape, then you have to write all everything, and if it is about the ancient landscape, you have to write all the ancient landscape that is seen, 6 or 7, whatever it is seen. That's how academic point of view will be having the questions. Then few things to know about the theory at this time, like philosophies. Simultaneously, you have to understand about this philosophies also. So there are various philosophies that is coming into existence from the earlier days. So the very earlier theory we all know is the theory of evolution. So natural selection theory by Darwin's theory is the first theory of evolution. All these were linked to landscape. So from there, it is like no starting up, like no understanding the environment, ecology, and how we relate landscape to it, understand the evolution pattern, and then scape the landscape accordingly. So Darwin's theories of natural selection, what happened to any species. So there are a lot of experiments conducted by Charles Darwin. So this is Gallup Galapagos Island experiment has been done, where he gone through the research of looking at the species that is existing in this particular island, and where various species of different kind of environments were lying there, and he has seen like the species have been slowly transforming the features according to their needs. So depending on survival of the fittest, they try to adapt their features in connection with the landforms that is existing. So you can see this is adaptive theory that has been seen from the natural selection theory. That is the finches. Of the finches, you can see how they have been slowly changed. So according to the they want to rely on the prey, on the seeds, insects, and what they were. So whatever it is, less, then they want to depend on the other thing features, and the stronger seeds they want to break. So the finches have been well developed. So the species which change over the time and the space, all organisms share common ancestors with the other organisms. Even though they are sharing the common ancestor, they have these features developed differently. And evolutionary change is gradual and slow in the Darwin's view. This is the natural selection. So when we observe anything, this thing is happening for all the traits, whatever, whether it's a human trait or the animals, we can see this even for the plants and trees. If you observe any tree on the street side, you can see if there is a building nearby, or a line, transformer line is coming, it will automatically adjust, and the tree will just lean away from the building. It will lean away from the concrete which is emitting higher heat, and it will just be connected to the open space more. So these are all the natural way of behavior of the animals as well as plants. It automatically know how to adjust to the condition, and it will be doing the survival of the fittest, according to survival of fittest. So favorable variations, it is trying to adapt, and origin of new species will be developed in that own kind or the own species. So these are the general theories he has given: variation, inheritance, high rate of population growth, differential survival and reproduction. Even the human beings are increased in their population by the survival of the fittest theory only. We know how to adapt to unfavorable conditions with the favorable variations, and we try to dominate the whole thing. So this is the first theory. These are all the scientific theory, and how this scientific theory is very important for us to understand and work on with the landscape. How the ecology is changing. If the habitat is going to change, the ecology of the living beings and the other things, the traits will also, the species will have the variation if the habitat is going to change. So if you are going to change something in your landform, you are doing a small variation in the whole ecosystem. That's a major thing you have to keep in your mind. It's not a simple thing as you do for a residential thing or something. You are going to do some change in the ecosystem or a habitat space. The whole system will be disturbed. Then how it will be behaving in a new way. So all those things you keep in your mind. That's the reason why all these theories, the knowledge of theory is important for you to understand. So next comes the important Davies theory. It is a metaphysical development where he shows it's not only the physical traits that is passed on from forefathers, it's also the pattern of behaviors also. They have a habit of always combing their hair, or having the hands on the head often. The same kind of behavior is also repeated, the way you eat the food or taste the food. There is some connection with your forefathers, even your grandmothers, or somebody will be telling you have the same habit of your ancestor. So even though you have not met them, you have some connection which is happening internally and has been passed on. So not only the physical thing, the behavioral things is also connected. So always when you disturb a particular thing, the ecosystem or a habitat, you are disturbing the whole traits. They have a way of living there, and how to work on that particular place. Everything will be disturbed. So these are all the several theories that is connected. J.P. Scott. So he has given a lot of theories related to the ingestive, eliminative, sexual, caregiving, care soliciting, agnostic, gregarious, shelter seeking. So these are all different theories because of one or the other, we will be changing our behavior. Like shelter seeking theory, like no, every that the animals finding very comfort under the shade of a tree. So why they flock together here? And if there is no shade, why they are flocking together in a particular place? If they are getting a shelter in a particular place, so how a particular small elephant is taking shelter under the mother's body. So all these, like no, the animals have the habit of seeking shelter. Even all our human beings have the habit of seeking shelter. That's the reason why we are making our shelter more comfortable, that other intervention is not going to happen inside our shelter. So we're making the maximum thing, and we have gone the step ahead. Like no, when animals, they're cared only about the territory, but we are increasing our territory far behind our humans need, and we are even taking the animals place, or like no, any other living beings or any other ecosystem. We are taking the complete control of the whole ecosystem also, for like no, for the shelter seeking behavior of us. We need a shelter, so we need the shelter to be more protective, more protective, more protective, and the egoistic theory comes in, and we are not giving the care for the other animals that is going to take shelter in the whole, in the same world. So there are a lot of things like this. For ingestive, for example, a particular species may be dependent on the particular tree for the eating alone. Like no, they need to survive only near to that particular places. And again, these things will be connected to the ecosystem of the particular trees also. As I said, the dado tree and the calvaria, dado bird and the calvaria trees. So they will survive near this calvaria trees because they love that fruit, and only they can digest the seed, and they can bring in that like no, the spread of the particular trees. So once the dado tree is dado bird is gone to the hunters, since they are taken for the meat, we cannot see calvaria trees there. Only a few trees are existing now, and they are finding new mechanism. Same way like dado bird, because dado bird is extinct, isn't a extinct species. So now they are bringing in a machine which can digest the same way like dado. So at least by that way we can bring in the calvaria tree. Like so, we are disturbing the ecosystem if we disturb one particular species in that. So the shelter seeking have like no, the 9 categories of behaviors JP Scott have given. Lot of things like no, when you check on with these things, there are a lot of things like no, why the behavior is related to the landscape, and why it has to be preserved that way, why the ecosystem should not be disturbed. And each and everything is very important. Every ecosystem, whether it's a grassland ecosystem or it is a huge canopy greenland ecosystem, so why it's very important. And you said like no, the agnostics behavior, social behaviors we have, the threatening factors we have, so that make us to like no, trend us to take a particular territory. Like if you even now, if you see any dogs on the street, they will have a territory. They don't leave another dog to enter into the street. They just chase the dog till the end of the street. They'll have one territory there. They just leave it there, then only they will come back. Otherwise, it will take the whole command of the whole street, as if it belongs to only that particular dog, and it will not allow the another dog to enter into that particular territory. But the same behavior it will not show to the human beings. It know, and but again it knows like no, it has a territory for the humans also. If they come out of that part, it again shows like the same agonistic nature to it. So these are all inbuilt, like no, you are observed for like no, here it's a inbuilt rote memory inside you. So you know this is my territory, I won't allow. So everybody is like that. Even in your house, you will not allow. Like you will be just like a king or a queen. So when you go out, you know how to behave. You will not bring in the same kind of behavior, because you will not be respected when you show the same kind of behavior outside. So it is something like no, it is making us to behave like no, understanding our territory, understanding our like no, the limits. So all those things are connected together. So even in the landscape, when you bring in, so the snakes have their own territory. It will not come out of it unless otherwise it is disturbed. So and it doesn't want another people to enter into that ecosystem also, because it's its own territory, and it knows like no, how, there is a permissible limit how much it can enter other living beings to be there. So unless otherwise it doesn't disturb it, it is allowing the other species also to live with it. So this is like competitor aggression or the survival of fittest. We are trying to like no, show the way, like the behaviors is showing the way to how we live in. So we are understanding all these things, and we are trying to bring in the the scale, landscape and the design connected to all these theories. And there is one more theory called as allomimetic behavior, which is like just it will be contagious. If you laugh, another person laugh. If you yawn, another person will yawn. So if one dog licks, another dog will also lick. So it is just a contagious behavior. So if you see somebody is doing that, you just do that. So it's just a contagious thing. So many places we have seen that it is like a contagious. Even the elders or like no even leaders, they have this contagious behavior observation that is happening everywhere. That's the reason why we have seen like no row of houses built and a lot of development happening alongside the road. If everybody started building near the roads and the near to the transportation path, they feel like no it's a shelter seeking theory. They find it as the most surveilled area, so they want their houses near to the roads. Mostly it will be like no wherever the roads were developed, you can see like no either side the residential developments were coming in, or like no mixed use developments will be coming in. This shows like no how it's again a kind of like behavior which is very contagious, and everywhere all over the world we can see these theories connected together. So if you see in a bigger term, it will give you a lot of understanding about how various things theories are linked, how the social behaviors are linked, as you said, agnostic behavior or like territorial behavior or a shelter seeking behavior or like a caregiving behavior. Why we have all those things, which is taking the maximum control of the landscape we are trying to create. And defense behavior, so they so you know like no before hurting itself, you know that if they come and say it will be a big problem for us, so I don't allow. So I give you a compound wall saying like this is your limit. So even if you want to enter in, you have to take permission from me to enter in. So it is giving a lot of things like no showing the territoriality, as I earlier said, like how a dog behaves in a particular region or how a human behave in a particular region. And there is another behavior called as thanatos, very like no you just act like you have been like no not noticed, or like no other people will not notice you. So the beetles will just act like they have died, so the predators will come and just they move on. So this is a kind of like no thanatos, which is also a common behavior that is seen in every living being. And hiding, so you try to camouflage yourself or hide behind something. These are the behavioral defense theories. A lot of defense theories are there, how you behave in case of any worst cases. What kind of spaces you will be preferring in a particular area. So based on this, we'll have like no the prospect residue theory, the another important theory in landscape. Um, So continuing the evolution theory and the various shelter seeking theories, defense theories, and like no the various theories like no how it made the evolution pattern and the behavioral pattern escape the particular landscape that has been influenced in the particular landscape. This is seen in the J. Appleton's theory of like no how the experience of landscape is done, why we prefer these kind of like no the enclosed spaces or a protected spaces, uh, connected with all these earlier theories what we have seen. And what we actually select around us, why we don't want like no mostly the food producing varieties, and why we want other ornamental varieties, because we don't want the other animals to come inside our circle. So we avoid this kind of like food producing plants around our garden, which in that way which they will not come and interact with us, and like oh we will be protected from those animals. And this is a popular theory of prospect and residue theory. Like everybody will be loving to have like no control of what is happening around them. So generally when we look at a place, we will take a spot wherein we can observe everything around us. So we get a safe feeling of like, okay, everything is seen. So it is everything seen from this particular prospect behavior. So refuge is not being seen, but you want to see, but you don't want yourself to be seen. So you just hide yourself, but you will have a control of what is happening around you. So that is a refuge nature. This is the common nature any living being will have. So, for example, the emperors or powerful people will have the prospect nature of like, looking everything under their control and other thing. Refuge will be like, the common living being who want the survival to be safe, and like, all the animals which want what is the thing going around them, but they don't want them to be seen. So you select some hiding place where you can enjoy the space, and you don't want you to be the limelight. So generally we create spaces uh, knowingly or unknowingly with these theories only, like the prospect or the refuge or any shelter seeking theory or a territoriality or a defense behavioral theory. So generally when you see the prospect, it is like being you can see everything clearly from the prospect thing. But in the refuge, you will be there, but you will not be seen, but you can see everything around you. Like you can take a refuge under the cave or under the tree, so you will not be clearly seen. So, but you have a control of what is happening around you. It's again another defense nature only. So if you take a small landscaped area in front of your house, so this is the refuge space, and this is the prospective space. So you love being a refuge and looking at monitoring what it is outside your space. So a refuge space, from there it is the prospect space. It's a limelight space. So from here, if you stand, everybody can see you. But if you sit here and watch, like you will not be prominently seen, but you will have a control of what is happening around you. Then there's a hazard space, like you know what is the risk around you, the risk in the environment. So whenever you look at a space, you will find out like what are the escape route, how you can escape from that particular space if there is something life threatening elements happen in that particular area. So all these theories were linked together, and these theories have an important role in the landscape you are going to design also. So that's the reason why I'm also introducing this, because it will be useful for your design palette also. So we are understanding the theories of various theory that is happening around, and otherwise if I go deep into the philosophies of theory, it will be a little bit boring. So I have made it a little bit interesting for you. Like these are the simple things you have to understand in terms of the theories and philosophies and the various people who are involved in it. And of course, the history, how it has been connected. So when I connect this and see the history also, we can see like, uh, why they have done all these things, whether it's like a territory they want to show or a prospect they want to show, or whatever element they are trying to create. As they create a garden as a refuge space, they don't want the open wilderness of landscape, because they want to define who should be using their garden, who should enter into the garden. So from the open natural landscape, they've gone into an enclosed spaced garden. So the theories and all the philosophies is now having a connection with the gardens or the spaces you are going to design day-to-day life. You are going to scape something or you are going to design something. It will have a connect with all these theories and principles also. So that way you have to look it as a connection in the theory. So any doubt any of you have?
No, it is okay, ma'am.
You understood something?
Yes, ma'am.
Very, very, very sad voices I'm hearing from Krishnamurti and
Hey, no, 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 ma'am.
Arun.
It is not like very low voice.
So you understood?
Yeah, yeah, history, ma'am.
So yeah, you can write the exam well, no?
Yeah, yeah.
I
History.
should be sure from your part for the academic point also. So these are all the important factors you have to consider. Apart from that, they are very important for your